aware that April 4th, Holy Week, is not here. It's at Grange. Did I get it right this time? Grange Christian Church. Al is speaking. And Denise is singing. Man, this is Rotary All-Star Game, so let's show up for that. Yeah. It is right behind the fiscal court building on the same block. Yeah. I do have confirmed Clint Cahoe. I do have confirmed past President's Day. We do have Jason Morgan confirmed, and I'm working on a couple more things for May, and so is Steve. So lots of really great things happening in terms of programming. Keep your information coming and related to what we might be able to do next. I wanted to celebrate the speech contest. We did not get to do it in our meeting last week because of the way the schedules worked out and a couple of different things, but we did have the speech contest last week. Stan, thank you so much for celebrating that in that effort. It was that Sammy Freeland, there in the bottom left hand, was the winner. And then we had one other student. It was an odd thing, so we only had two, and normally we've had as many as four. But it was a great time. The one who finished second is a junior, and I think he's got a real chance at winning next year. So really great things happening. Tomorrow is the district in Owenton. Is that right? Sectionals. Okay. I cannot go. I told you I might try to go. I cannot. My schedule just got really weird yesterday. So anybody that wants to join Stan for that, feel free to let him know. And just so we have an understanding of Stan, stand up again for me if you would. You, Stan, stand up. I want to say a big, where did he go? Here we go. I wanted to say a big thank you to Stan. Stan, you have a spirit of leadership about you that I find so impressive. You've led so well through not just the speech contest, but many other things about the fabric of our club over my 4 years of being in this club. And it's been so much fun to be part of your Rotary Club. Thank you for all you're doing. Can we give Stan an applause? Thanks. Thank you, Stan Clausen, for all you do. I also want to say a big thank you. Hope is not here, but I wanted to say a big thank you. Oh, there she is. When did you sneak in? I didn't see you. Okay. Hope, stand up. Hope is somebody was a real significant member of the club as I started in October of 2018. And as I've been a part of this club, many of my relationships have not been as deep as they have been with her, because she has been somebody who's responsive and helpful and kind and supportive. And I wanted to say thank you very much for all you're doing. Hope, keep it up. Yeah. So thanks to the recognition committee, we can call those service above self awards. That's where we're going. Thanks, Mark, for leading that direction. And I wanted to also speak about that lady, Jane Ashley. Somebody talk to me about the Tony Cotton Award. Somebody knows more about it than I do. Tony Cotton, 2023 Tony Cotton Women of Distinction Award. Congratulations. Yeah.
He started being in it, and the award was named his wife.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, this is 2 years in a row that a Rotarian has won that award, because it was Donna Sabo last year, and it's Jane Ashley Pace this year. So, ladies, we got some other opportunities in 2024. But I'm sure it's going to be a Rotarian next year as well. Congratulations, Jane Ashley. That's a well-deserved award. I also want to recognize Blaine Anderson. Thanks to the recognition committee for shouting out the idea that Blaine should be Rotarian of the Month for December because of his effort around Salvation Army bell ringing, leading that for us. How much did we raise? Do we know?
About $8,000.
Okay. $8,000 raised for the Salvation Army, thanks to our efforts in the Interact Club. Blaine, thank you very much, man. really just appreciate so much what you continue to do in the club. Yeah. I'm sure Mark was not one of those. So yeah, thank you all very much for all your service and all your work here in the club. Steve. It's ready to go. Just hit the big button.
Speaker, been around the Grange quite a while. He did it for 4 years. And all together, I think you got a separation, but all together, he's been with Oldham now for 17 years.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Urban has been, you spoke here before.
Yes.
For a while, but I want to reach out and ask you if he would be so kind to come back and speak to us again. And thank you so much for your time. I know you're busy, but we appreciate hearing from you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yep. Thanks. I always appreciate it. And Blaine, I think this works by itself, so I don't have to stand by the microphone. Is that correct? Oh, that's for
Zoom.
oh, got it. Okay.
You're being broadcast live.
Excellent. Excellent. So I always appreciate coming here because I get to see a lot of old friends and people I've seen for a long time. Steve mentioned I've been in Oldham County for 24 years. I know that because that's how old my daughter is. So that she was born 6 months after I moved here to start working in planning and development. And I do have 17 years, first under John Black and now with Judge Vogel. I had a recess for about 8 years, but I'm back. You know, every time I come here, I try to think, what am I going to say that's a little different? It isn't the pitch about comprehensive planning or infrastructure. And I guess this time I was a little melancholy. I turned 70 this coming August. Hard for me to believe, but when I think about that and how long I've worked in Oldham County, I decided to make it a little bit of a retrospective presentation about Oldham County, not about Jim Urban. You know, I thought about what I wanted to do. And when I really think about what impacted growth in Oldham County, I recently had a great conversation with Bobby Klingenfuss. And if you know Bobby and you know his dad, Carl and the farmers at the time in the 50s and 60s, in my opinion, had the most influence on growth in Oldham County. Why is that? Because their milk was downgraded because they were on wells and cisterns. They got together and started the Oldham County Water District. Now, if you go north of Oldham County into Trimble and on beyond, and you'll see a lot, I-71 runs through the land without a whole lot of development around it. And if they put in ramps and opened up that land, they'd need water in order for it to grow. And so these farmers, although they were really looking after their production of milk, they were the ones who started the water district. And if you ever want to hear the whole story, if you see Bobby Klingenfuss, if you know him, ask him. He tells the story much better than I do. But once they had established by pre-selling water meters to farmers, Bobby's father went around to the landowners and trying to get easements across their land to put in a water line. And if for some reason they said no, he just went across the street and he went down that side until he hit a roadblock and came back over. They were forward thinking enough to understand that once they had water in the county, they were going to start seeing some growth, because you can't live in a place if you don't have water. And so they actually started planning and zoning. They put together the first planning and zoning joint planning commission. And the reason that Bobby tells me they did it is because they didn't want to see mobile homes become the primary form of housing in Oldham County. And today, mobile homes still need a conditional use in order to be built in Oldham County or place. So we don't really have a lot. They're in mobile home parks, and occasionally there's a replacement, but we have manufactured homes now that we allow. So that's really kind of a quick introduction, if you will, to, there are many other items and reasons why Oldham County has grown. So as I put my thoughts together, I asked the question, does anybody, and I'm going to test you if anybody knows, how many square miles or how many acres are there in the boundaries of Oldham County? Steve?
185 square miles?
I thought it was 185, but when we look on GIS and we now have more accurate mapping, it's 192 square miles, and that's 125,000 acres. So, you know, I start thinking about, well, okay, of that, how many acres or what percent of the land are actually developed today? So anybody want to take a guess at that number? 5%? Anybody else? 20%? Somebody told me the other day 40% when I was asking the question. There, it's all about perspective, where you live, how crowded do you think it is, if you can't get out of your neighborhood. I'm not going to give you the answer just yet. I'm going to show you what happened retrospectively again. So what we have is actually our GIS system allows me to map the subdivisions that were approved by decade. And I'm going to have to really swing around so I can look at this too. It's hard to see, but let's see. There's in red along the river a subdivision, and then I think down here, and this is the I'm sorry, it advanced, but in the 1950s there were 13 subdivisions approved. The next slide, this one is in the 1960s, there were 38. So if you can see from where you are, the red is now the subdivisions that were approved in 1960s. So in 1940, the population was 10,716 people. In 1950, it was 11,000. So it only raised by about 300 people in a decade. In the 60s, it went up to 13,380. So about 2,000 people coming from those subdivisions that were approved. In the 1970s, there were 123 subdivisions approved. And the population in the 1970 census was 14,687. Again, that was taken in 1970 before the subdivisions were approved and people started occupying those houses. But think about it, and we always say, and Blake knows this, when busing started happening in Jefferson County, that's when we started seeing growth in the outlying counties and especially in Oldham County. And the Oldham County Public Schools, I think ever since then, were credited with a lot of this growth, much like the Water District was. We started seeing that everybody said the quality of schools in Oldham County, let's move out there. In the 1980s, 48. So in the beginning of the 1980s, there were a lot of houses, and I mean, a lot of developments, but really it's the residual coming from the 70s. So it tapered off a little bit. And then in the 90s, there were 109. So we saw another growth spurt. So the subdivisions that were approved in the 70s got built out in the 80s. New ones started coming in the 90s. So in 1980, where the straight line projection for housing, I mean, for population was predicted to be 18,000 people, it was actually 27,000. So that growth in the 70s saw a significant impact on actual population in the 80s. And from there, it just kept growing. So again, we're just adding really to the green. I'm going to show you the composite at the end of this so you can see. In 2000s, there were 138. This skipped one, I'm sorry. Don't know how to go backwards. There it's backwards. 109 in the 90s. In 2000 and then 2010s, there were another 170 subdivisions that were approved, actually a little more. So the population rose from in the 1990s from 33,000 people. In 2000, it was 46,000 people. And then in 2010, the census was 60,000, and the 2020 census is at 67,607. So what we're seeing now, and what I'm going to talk about in a minute, is what the other influences there are on growth in Oldham County. And again, there are many. I'm picking out a couple of them that I think are significant.
Road or highway goes up lower third there, lower third.
Most of the subdivisions on this side.
Well, right up through the middle, is that what you're talking about? Let's see, how do I do this? You're talking about that highway right there. So somebody can help me remember, that was opened, I think, in early 70s. I didn't look that up, but I think that's when I-71 was open, or mid 70s, 74. So obviously that had a significant impact, and it was a good question because that you see a lot of the growth is along the I-71 corridor. The other place is along the Jefferson County boundary and a little bit in the US 42 corridor. And primarily that's because infrastructure was in place. Again, we had a water system. Got to remember that I believe those same farmers started the first fire districts in Oldham County. I know South Oldham is one of the oldest ones. Then I-71 came in. So that was another huge influence on growth in Oldham County. So this is the composite. Altogether, again, population in 2020, it rose from really in the 50s when I started this mapping of 11,000, we're at 67,000. The prediction is that over the next 20 years, we could see as much as 111,000 residents of Oldham County. So again, this is just a chart that I created. I couldn't get it to work on the 2020 census. For some reason, I ran out of space and ran out of time. Steve. I have it in my laptop. I can answer it later. I'm sorry I didn't commit it to memory. And I didn't write it on my cheat sheet either. Again, turning 70, you need notes.
Give it again. Give it again.
Well, there are probably about 300 altogether, ranging in size from just a few lots up to, like, Hillcrest is 400. So there's quite a few. This is the answer to the question. How much of land in Oldham County is currently developed? These are not perfect numbers. We did it through the GIS mapping. I might have missed some things, but I broke it down essentially by residential, which takes up about 22% of the developed land. And commercial, including industrial, is 2%. Institutional, that's the prison, the schools, and Oldham County government, is another 3%. Parks is 0.3%. And I'm going to make a statement about that in a minute. So altogether, there's about 33,600 acres developed, 27%. So again, somebody said 5%. It's really, I thought it was interesting doing this. I'm going to go back because when you look at this, what was interesting, the way we map this is all that's in white. There might be individual houses here and there in the white area, but developed area, all that is in white on this map is undeveloped. And again, there may be a farm with farmhouses on it. There could be a minor plat that was done with a couple of houses on them here and there, but the developed property that came through the Planning Commission is mapped here. So the thing I'm left with, and again, remaining introspective, retrospective, is, and as the planner for the community, where are we going to be in the next 20 years? So let's make an assumption that actually in 30 years, I think it is, we might break 100,000 population. There are some big developments coming forward. Those of you remember over 3 years ago, the Clore and Jones family is proposing at exit 14, and they're still working on it, a new urbanism style development that'll be mixed use. And I don't know what the ultimate population is going to be there, but they're expecting, again, quite a significant amount of residential units in there. We're seeing a trend towards smaller lots. I've thought about this a lot and actually spoke at another group about the trends of younger people being much the same as older people, like myself. When you downsize, you want to get rid of your lawnmower. That was a happy day in my life. I don't cut the grass anymore. I live in a single family standalone, but somebody else cuts the grass. Younger people are coming when they either live in the city, and I'm looking at Louisville in particular. And if you look at the neighborhoods in Louisville that have been developed, they are looking for bicycle lanes and access to parks and close by neighborhood restaurants, bars, and entertainment. And when they couple up and they eventually decide they're going to move somewhere and they start looking at Oldham County, I don't see any of them wanting to cut 5 acres of grass. So a lot of the development that's coming in, they're proposing smaller lots with closer setbacks. And some people say, well, I wouldn't live there. Well, that's what a lot of people are looking for. Smaller lots, less maintenance, more time for family and for enjoyment. So with that, you know, we really have to pay attention to our infrastructure. And back in the late 90s, when I first came here, the most significantly impacted piece of our infrastructure was schools. And we created a thing called capacity planning, and the schools are part of that. The state statute allows us to look at the ability of our infrastructure to accommodate new growth, and the schools are part of that. So we now have capacity planning, so the Board of Education is well informed on the developments that are coming in, and they're able to better plan and predict the student population. The housing market collapse in 07, 8, 9, 10 area, that allowed a lot of our infrastructure to catch up. So I believe that we have plenty and adequate water. We're making sure we have fire protection. We also have had a lot of road improvements. I lost track of the number. At one point, we were involved in over $125 million worth of road improvements. Some of those are still going on, like the I-71 ramps, the extension of Commerce Parkway. We're always looking for additional funding for improving ramps. I think one of the things we have to do is look at our existing roads, the county roads, and make sure that their edge of pavement is safe. Back when my oldest stepson was in school, his graduating class lost 5 students. Cars got off the edge of the road and flipped over. And so we're constantly looking at those things, especially and including as the population continues to grow. And I've been a real advocate for additional police and additional parkland. And if you saw, again, 0.3% of our land is used for parks, and everybody is looking for those opportunities. So that's, I guess, my challenge to not only myself in the remaining years that I'm going to serve the county, but anybody else that's involved in the community. And with that, I'll answer any questions that you all might have.
Is there a planning percentage for parks and recreation that planners try to target? You follow my question?
I think it's more of recreational opportunities than it is just like a percentage of land, and especially given the kind of the breadth of what people look for. I mean, everything from archery and fishing all the way up to Ironman exercising and running, and especially bicycle lanes and bicycling opportunities. You all have seen bicycles on our roads. It can be frustrating. We try not to hit them, but they're going slow. We want to go fast, and there's no room for them to get off the edge of the roadway. So we are creating the Oldham County Trail, which real soon, when we pave the extension of Commerce Parkway, you'll be able to go from the Grange all the way to Pee Wee Valley on sidewalks or on a bike trail. So that's another opportunity. Now we're looking at trying to connect those. There is a percentage for police. You know, nationally, they say that you should have 1 police officer for every 2,000 population. The ideal number is actually 1,500. You say, well, that sounds like an awful lot. Well, they do wellness checks, everything from domestic calls to break-ins to accident reporting to traffic management. And so you might have seen recently the fiscal court raise the salary of sergeants and patrol officers to match what's in Louisville, so that we could get more people actually interested in working in Oldham County. Our rate was a lot lower. And so we have had a lot of applications. That I think will help us to actually boost up our police officer force. Another question? Yes, sir.
So when you started in this plan, how do they determine what point is that based on current traffic studies, or are they also planning what will happen? And then also, who
Great question, and I got 15 minutes worth of an answer to that, so I'll try to make it short. Well, the first thing is when a proposed subdivision is in front of us, we require a traffic analysis, which would, or either a traffic study or a traffic analysis, and it's different assessment rather, or traffic analysis, depending on the number of trips that would be generated by that proposed development. Each house, according to national standards, generates 10 trips per day. And some people say, well, that's an awful lot. Well, when I leave and go to work, that's 1 trip. When I come home, that's 2. If I go back out for the groceries, that's 3 and 4. If I've got somebody else in my household that's making trips, quickly you get up to 10. So immediately on the roadway that's affected by a proposed development, if it's required because of the traffic analysis to put in turn lanes, that's the developer's responsibility to do, to put in turn lanes. So whether it's residential, commercial, it would depend on how many trips they're going to generate. If there's a roadway that doesn't require, or the development doesn't require any improvements, but you look down the road and go, well, there's an intersection that's always crowded. Sometimes we make that traffic analysis go down a distance. Now, what is the distance? It depends on how far that intersection is. We don't go 2 miles away. We might go a 1/4 mile and look and see if there's any improvements that we would recommend that the developer do. They're also responsible for upgrading the water lines to make sure there's adequate domestic water and firefighting water, sewer lines if that's what they're doing. And then there's also mitigating number of building permits they get per year based on the school capacity. So typically everything is developer driven and developer borne, all the expenses. When we have a roadway, and Commerce Parkway is a really good example, it's 1 lane in each direction. When we originally planned that, we bought 100 feet of right of way. So we knew it was going to need to be wider one day. And when a development comes in, say Watts Home Center is an example, and I know Fred had a development plan proposed and approved on Commerce Parkway. Their trips generated didn't require them to put in turn lanes, but one day they'll be part of all the traffic on that. So we're looking at funding mechanisms like through KIPTA, which is a regional transportation planning, where we get about $21 million a year to spread out around the Louisville metro area. And, next year I'll be asking for funding to widen Commerce Parkway. So that's a short answer to a long, and I hope I hit what you were looking for. Yeah. 53 in the Grange. One day somebody in Louisville told me there's more traffic signals on 53 than there are per mile than there are on Dixie Highway. So, and I kind of believe it. Per mile. John. Oh, good golly. Two things, if I can. When I first came here to Oldham County, the number one issue, there were 2. I won't talk about the second one, but one of them was growth. And when we looked at growth in Oldham County, I was the one that looked at the state regulations and came up with the idea of capacity planning, which is still in place today. And other communities have called and asked us how we did it or what we do and how we do it. And I've explained it to them. So I think that was really an important growth management tool. Doesn't stop growth, it just manages growth. Recently, the new library that's being built on US 42, about 5 years ago, I met with Mr. Brown and said, I need 5 acres for a library. And I pointed at the corner that it's currently going to be on. And he promised me, it took a long time, but that he would give us that land. So I'm real proud of that. That was a almost $2 million piece of property that he donated for the library. And they're going to break ground here probably in the next month or 2. So I think that was really pretty neat. And let me tell you, John, why that was, I couldn't imagine when I was a kid having a job like this, where I became so integrated into the community that I could approach a guy like Mr. Brown and say, I need this land for a library, and him say yes, or any of the rest of you, quite honestly. You know, each night when I go home and I think about all the aggravation I had during the day, I end my night by thinking about all the wonderful people that I've been able to interact with that day, and like being here and seeing so many of you. And I I'm so thankful for that. So again, turning 70, being melancholy or whatever about getting to that age, I is so thankful for being able to be here, quite honestly.
Quick recap on,
Okay, so the biggest one is the exit mile marker 20 new ramps. They're supposed to be open to the public this time next year or summer of next year. It looks like they might be ahead of that. I haven't had an update, but that's the scheduled open to the public date. The Commerce Parkway extension that will actually open up some land. It really was intended to bring all of the traffic from the Buckner Industrial Park, instead of going over the railroad tracks on 146, where there was the risk of being hit by trains, out to exit 18. That is, we're waiting for the asphalt plants to open, and they'll come back in and put the final coat of asphalt on and put the asphalt on the mixed use trail. Let's see. Jason, help me remember what else is going on out there roadway. Oh, yes, the 393. The utilities are supposed to start being moved by the end of this year. LG&E has promised us they've got to move gas, electric, and water. Water, I think, is easy. When I say, when you see them building to the south of the current train track, they have to build a temporary runaround track. When you see that being built, we're really underway. The first thing they do is they build a temporary track. They put the train on it. Then they take the existing track, take it out, and they got to dig down 18 feet and build the bridge. And then they'll put the train back on the existing track on top of that bridge. So that's really the marker for me when we're really getting going.
Is that a 2-year project?
You know, that I'm laughing because it was supposed to be open to the public in 2010. It's 2 construction seasons. It depends on when they start. So if they start in the fall, it's going to take longer than if they started in the spring. But building that bridge for the train is a big deal. And then getting the track back over and the rest of it. And it comes out right by the John Black Center. So it goes cross country from there. So, you know, it's a big project. CSX is not paying for the bridge. State funds are paying for the train bridge. Here's the interesting thing. They're making us put in a 2-lane train bridge when there's only 1 track.
Well, that money.
It is in the state budget. And last year was their budget year where they approved it. So that's why we're trying to get it under construction now. The other one, I-71, is under construction. I think they're completely open to the public is actually the beginning of next year. There's still a long way to go up to get up to exit 14. They're already engineering exit 14 to 18. And if you go online, anybody that lives in Fox Run or anybody that's backs up to the interstate, now's the time to go online and you can comment about things like barrier walls, sound barriers. Yes.
Allen Lane and the CSX overpass over to 146.
Thanks for reminding me. I was standing up here trying to remember all of them. That's the same situation. CSX has approved the design of the bridge and we've got to move utilities. And the problem has been that the utility companies have been so busy, the LG&Es and AT&Ts and telecommunication people, that they have asked the region to prioritize where they go next. And we didn't get the prioritization we thought we had. So Speaker Osborne has gotten involved. and kind of moved us up on their schedule for moving utilities. So that one is really close to the same schedule as the 393. We think that they'll move utilities sometime starting the end of this year. And the funding is actually committed through the state for that project. So we don't risk losing the funding on that one. Anybody else think of another road project? You're saying the ramps? Yeah, those are maintenance dollars, and the state has their funding mechanism for doing the maintenance. And Stan, I'm not involved in that. I don't really know, but I agree. Yep, they're full of holes.
Any thoughts on Highway 42 from top of the hill there in Prospect going out?
There are thoughts, and they're not really happy thoughts, quite honestly. That's another one that's stalled, waiting for utilities to relocate. And because we're prioritizing 393 and Allen Lane, that one again is big utilities that need to be moved, and LG&E has and I'm not blaming it all on them, but they are currently the ones holding the card on schedule. And I'd hate to stand up here and lie to you and say it's going to be next year. I don't really know, but that funding is secure through HIPTA, so we don't have to worry about funding for that going away.
How far will it go out?
Ridgemore Drive. So where the bank is and the first entrance to Hillcrest is Ridgemore Drive. So it'll be a continuous center turn lane, and on one side of the street there'll be a 10-foot wide shared use path.
Nice.
That was held up by right-of-way acquisition. There were court challenges to right-of-way acquisition there. One of them, a writer for the Courier Journal, I won't name, claimed that the state didn't have the right to take his property, and the other one was down near Prospect, where a family was arguing about whether or not their conservation land could be used or sold to the state for roadway improvement. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim. This was something Steve and I had prioritized to get you here. So thank you very much for all you're doing. So you need to know that as a club, we always honor our speaker with a donation in your honor to the International Rotary effort to eradicate polio.
Beautiful.
We heard this weekend, Steve, we're really close. Still looks like 2026, even with the wild, the vaccine-derived virus of polio having a resurgence. There does seem to be a lot of movement toward being polio-free internationally in 2026 still. So really excited about that. All right, I'm going to spin the wheel unless anybody has something they want to share for the good of the order. All right, get your tickets out. All right, who has 790? All right, front row, there we go. Robin is left, so I'm going to remind you it must go around twice, my friend. If it lands on orange, you get 40. If you land on the seal, you know what you get. It may not be anything. $106. $106, or you get pizza. I got your pizza. There we go. Let's see it. You got here. Just keep your own pizza coupon. All right, my friend, he gets to keep his pizza coupon. Everybody, thank you so much for being here today. Let's go serve somebody.
Oh yeah, there you go. You want that back?
You betcha. Jim, Mark.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm glad you remembered. I remembered to buy it, and then I forgot to remember to give it to you. Yes, we can move forward quickly. So this is the new way that they want to. And then they all have the.
Yeah.
I have